Good afternoon. So this is going to be a very short video that's intended to just sort of give you the most basic rundown and introduction so that we can immediately begin talking in class about these things. One thing that is important to remember about property is that ultimately property is about power and control. Who controls a thing and who has the power to define the use of it. And the history of property law is the extinction of power and control to more people over more things. But at its roots, property law is still built around the doctrine that all land descends from the sovereign. In other words, no matter where you go in the common law writ, if you trace a chain of title all the way back, the first grantor will always be the sovereign government. Whether that is the state of Kentucky, although in particular in Kentucky, the oldest grants there will come from Virginia, whether it's the Crown, whether it's the Sovereign Order of Malta. In common law jurisdictions, all grants of land can be traced back to the sovereign. So in that case, what happens when sovereigns change? For example, when the British acquired Jamaica from the Spanish, what happened to Spanish land grants, and did the prior owners have any claim that replacement owners are bound to respect? Now, if you read the cases, if you go back and you find them, you will find that there's actually an assertion that there's no disturbance of Spanish land property rights in Jamaica, and that those rights can continue to be alienated and the chain of title is still good. But the truth is that that's only one of the answers to the question, and that's the rule of law answer, which says that owners that are divested by sovereign transfers should be compensated as a matter of justice, even if law doesn't provide a remedy. So that's why we say that Spanish landowners still held dominion in their land in Jamaica. But the politics answer, and I'm a political scientist, says that power does what it wants. And where prior owners have no political influence, we can't expect there to be any sort of legal recourse. Now, which of these answers is correct in terms of accurately describing the world? Well, if you ask the judges, they will tell you that it's the first one, it's the law answer. But if you ask the people who are out there owning the land, I think the answer is closer to it depends. And so then the question becomes, which of these approaches to the law to sovereign transfers should be correct? And I think that's the question that you should be asking yourself. Now, from Crown grants, we developed this doctrine of tenures, where you had different types of rights that were associated with different types of service to the Crown. And we're not going to discuss tenures in any sort of detail because, frankly, they don't matter anymore. Tenures were eliminated in a series of statutory instruments beginning in 1290 and culminated in 1922. The vast majority of them were eliminated in 1660, so some of the Caribbean colonies received the doctrine of tenures, but Belize and the British Virgin Islands did not. However, they've been abolished by statute everywhere. Everywhere has adopted the same structure of freeholds and future interests that is used in the United Kingdom and the United States. The continued development of property rights began to establish estates. Now, if you look at the syllabus, you'll see that we're going to spend some significant time on estates, so we're not going to go into that in any detail in this video. For now, what you need to know is that an estate is a property interest that is bounded in space and in time. So when it's bounded in space, that means that it's connected to a particular geographic location. And bounded in time means that it has a beginning point and usually an ending point. And the other developments in property law include the development of the doctrine of intellectual property and the development of personal property, and we're going to talk about personal property a little bit in this class. Intellectual property we are not going to talk about at all, except that it exists. There, we're done. In St. Lucia and Guyana, things are handled differently with regard to real property. In St. Lucia, the key distinction in property is between movable property and immovable property. And for our purposes, we can assume that doctrines related to immovable property are similar to the common law doctrines related to land, and movable property doctrine is similar to the common law doctrines related to personal property. There are differences. We will not be covering them in this class. In Guyana, the civil law doctrine of dominion over land still applies, which means that it's impossible to have future interests in land. Ownership is absolute and is not bounded by time, only by space. Now, there are complications, but again, we're not going to talk about them in this class. So with that done, let's talk about the common law of real property in our class meeting at 3 o'clock today.